Now over to our next speaker, Helen. Helen Bazuaye is a gun of a writer with over 20 years experience in journalism, media and communications. She spearheaded and became chair of Publicis London's inaugural employee inclusion group and has launched her own content agency, Creative Grace. And she also moonlights for us as part of the Creative Equals family as one of our consultants. So we're super lucky to have her, and so are you to hear her present today. So over to you, Helen.
Good morning, everybody. You'll be happy to know I've put some mascara on, especially for you. I'm going to talk to you today about something that I've personally experienced, having worked with IKEA as their global editor-in-chief of their customer publishing magazine. And the fact that if you are a company that has D&I baked into your mission statement, it can help shape and frame your work to end up creating work that is more inclusive and better for the communities that it serves. So I started off with this quote, which is from Jesse Jackson, and I put it in, and I'm reflecting on the fact that a while back I wrote an inclusive language guide for an organisation. And when I was telling them my plans for it, I'd included some quotes, and they said, can we please not have any of those sort of trite quotes? And I reflected on it before this talk today, and I thought, you know, at the moment, with everything that happened last year, we use the language of inclusivity quite lightly. Those quotes that this one here from Jesse Jackson, who was a reverend and an activist and who grew up in Jim Crow era in America, who twice ran to be the Democratic presidential nominee and candidate, and has put himself in mortal danger to fight for the rights of other people. So I think that when we have these quotes, still I rise, by any means necessary, I have a dream, that we put on Canva created posts on our Instagram feeds, we sometimes forget that at the time that those people said those things and made those quotes, they really were living the dehumanizing effects of inequality. And then I think today, when we work with global brands, it's worth remembering that there are Jesse Jacksons today who are speaking truth to power, and they are doing it at danger of their own lives. If we think about what is in our news feeds at the moment, we can see that there are still issues. So these quotes, even though we have lost sight of what they mean, we should remember that today there are people that are still having to make those statements to ask for themselves to be treated as equal. So that's the human, I think, side of why diversity and inclusion matters. And then if we think of the business side of why it matters, this is from Alan Joyce, the CEO of Qantas. And he's talking about the fact that he has created a diverse company, and in doing so, it's made them more robust, and they've been able to withstand challenges and think better and innovate better. And time again, when there are research and studies done on diversity and inclusion and the benefit it brings, despite the fact that when I started working on this, people thought it was a nice to have, and let's give a hand up to those misrepresented groups. Diverse companies that practice inclusion do better than ones that don't. McKinsey's Diversity Wins report from 2020, which is the third in their series on diversity and the effect it has on business, found that, and I'm going to read this so that I get it right, companies that are in the top quartile for gender diverse leadership are 25% more likely to have above average profitability. When they look at that figure for ethnically diverse leadership, the figure rises to 36%. When you draw on diverse perspectives, then you're going to get smarter and more agile thinking, and that drives more and better innovation. In the end, a company that is diverse and puts that at the heart of what they do generates better ideas. They serve a wider number of communities better, and they're better able to solve emerging problems and needs. So I'm going to talk about IKEA. I worked as the global editor-in-chief of IKEA's customer publishing magazine for a number of years. I will say that I was on contract to work for them. So these thoughts are all my own. This is what I observed about the company. But what I would say that I found with working from IKEA is they successfully all understood and passed on to everyone that worked with them, all their contractors, all their co-workers, everyone that worked behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, whatever, the understanding of what they stood for and the principle that their company was built on. So Ingvar Kamprad founded the company back in 1943. He did it at a time when he looked around and it seemed like actually, if you that's wrong, sorry, it's 1959. He founded the company. He looked around at a time and said that if you have money, then you can have nice things and live a nice life. But if you don't have money, it seems that we don't like people to have that. You have ugly furniture, uncomfortable furniture, and low quality furniture. And he decided that actually the money that you have, your social status shouldn't be a barrier to you being able to be comfortable at home. So his mission statement from IKEA was to create a furniture company that created a better everyday life for the many, many people. That is the boiled down version of their mission statement, which as time has evolved, they've grown and built on that and put diversity front and center within it. So they claim to offer a wide range of well-designed functional home furnishing products at prices so low that as many people as possible will be able to afford them. Diversity is the key to success. Diversity comes in all shapes and sizes. Being ourselves and contributing with our uniqueness makes us all grow. And what I think is beautiful about that statement is a lot of the work that I've done with Creative Equals, we talk about the fact that a lot of people cannot bring their full self to work. And again, that's something that a lot of people say, and they may not think about what that means. But when you don't bring your full self to work and your full self isn't valued, then you hide bits of yourself and you decide, who do I need to be in this meeting? What version of Helen can I be in this space? And it's tiring. And it means that work isn't fun and work isn't enjoyable. And the company that you work for isn't getting the best of you. And what I love about what IKEA does is they understand that their co-workers, the people that they work for, are the people that bring the value to their company, and celebrating every side of them and boiling that and hard baking that into their mission statement means that they are going to get better and do better for people. And then thinking about IKEA, so started off a small little place in Sweden. It grew across Scandinavia, then moved into further parts of Europe, and now is global and in almost all parts of the world. It's opened in India a few years ago. One of the things I think companies that operate on a global scale sort of struggle with is that idea of, right, okay, we may have core values, but we may be going into markets that don't completely share those values. How do we balance that? How do we navigate that tension? And what IKEA have done is, again, be clear in their statements about what they believe in and what they stand for, and then you use that to judge what you will do. So here they then built on their first bit of their mission statement to say that we welcome all dimensions of diversity. A diverse and inclusive workplace is good for our co-workers, for our customers, and our business. We strive to have a diverse and inclusive work environment where co-workers feel valued for their uniqueness, recognized for their diverse talents, and where they can be themselves. So it's almost an answer to knowing that at times there will be that conflict. And when you're forced to or facing a decision on the ground, what do I do? What is right for IKEA? Do we do A or do we do B? When you have a mission statement that clarifies where you stand on diversity and inclusion, it helps you make those decisions much easier. I'd also say that one of the interesting things about IKEA is there is a saying that they side with people with thin wallets. They side with the people that have thin wallets. It's a very clear way of remembering when you're faced with something, where do you stand? So having looked at what their mission statement is, let's have a think about what that means and how that can translate into work that is inclusive. I've put in here about the clarity of vision, and you know that sometimes when you're creating work, there are so many different tick boxes, and I think them talked about data and insights and all those things that we feel that we have to checklist, we have to deliver to. We can sometimes lose sight of the core values and principles that we hold on to and we value. And if you have, as a company, figured out what those are and be clear about them, and you remind everyone about that every day, it just becomes second nature. It helps to make sure that the work that you create stands up to those missions and visions. So let's have a look at some of the work that they've done. The first story I want to talk about is IKEA's Disables. So this was done by IKEA Israel. They were done with McCann in Tel Aviv, and they worked with 2 NGOs, Milblat and Access Israel. And it's a piece of work that was born out of the knowledge that for 1 in 10 people, regular furniture is a problem. And that furniture that is created for different people's needs, for different needs, is twice as expensive and normally 3 times as ugly and doesn't make your home feel like a home. And they wanted to think about, right, if we're a company that is for the many and we want to democratize design, what does that look like? I'm going to get, if we go to the next slide, you to watch a little bit of the clip.
Hi, I'm Eldar, 32 years old. Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, of all places, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, cripple. I'd like to sit on a regular sofa, without being afraid I won't be able to get up, to open regular closets, or even to turn on a regular lamp. 1 in every 10 people in Israel is a disabled person. The IKEA design vision gave birth to the Disables project. Smart hacks making IKEA's best-selling items accessible. The project was created in collaboration with 2 NGOs, Milbot and Access Israel, and started off in the IKEA store with a hackathon of product engineers and disabled people that enabled better understanding of their needs. In the end of the developing process, 13 new products were born, each solving a different accessibility issue, such as sofa elevating legs for easier ascending, lamp button enlargement, special handles for packs closets, and more. The new products are presented in the world's first accessible living spaces in the IKEA stores. The new models are available for download from the project's website, disables.com, and 3D printing anywhere in the world. So that Eldar, Dina, Pavel, Yinbal, Moshe, Tahel, and Liel can also feel comfortable in their own homes like everybody else. Now they should come up with products that assemble themselves.
Fantastic. And I'll just end by pointing out that with, before I go on to the next slide, with that, by May 2019, it had been downloaded in 127 countries. So they made it an open source design, which meant that more people could have access to it. Again, going back to that principle of creating a better everyday life for the many people. They took home the Cannes Lion Health Innovation Award. And they got a 37% sales increase in products with add-ons against the previous year and a 33% revenue increase. So they made life better for communities and actually reaped the benefits of it financially. It made sense for them as a company. The next slide, the one that we've got on now, is again, I'm trying to talk about what it is, what it means to be a brand that speaks in spaces that sometimes it doesn't feel like you belong. That's often some of the things that we wrestle with in the work that we do. What do we have? What right do we have to talk on this? Why should we speak on this? This was a piece of work, I'm not going to play the work because it could be triggering, but this was a piece of work that was done by IKEA in the Czech Republic. They worked with the Triad Advertising, which is a company based in Prague. And they came up with this piece of work called IKEA Ghost, which was aimed at addressing that statistic that shows on the screen that 47% of Czech women have experienced some sort of a mental abuse at home. This was during lockdown. And if we think about what we have seen in the UK and the figures that we have seen surface around lockdown, I'll just say that the Centre for Women's Justice noted in November 2020, there was a 49% rise in calls of domestic abuse services in the UK. In the first month of lockdown, there were 16 homicides that were attributed to domestic abuse. That was 3 times the number on the previous year and the highest number in 11 years. And if you bear in mind that on average, a woman will experience 50 incidents of abuse before she will do anything, before she will report it, before she will call for help. So that gives you some sort of idea of the level of that issue. And for IKEA, I would assume that one of the things that they think about is we want home to be a haven. And they acknowledge when they see statistics like this, that home isn't a haven for everybody. And so they did something to address it. So I put some bullet points on the side here. So when you're thinking about let's create work that is inclusive, sometimes it can be messy, it can be hard work, but it does take commitment. It's not something that you just do as a flash in the pan. And I would say IKEA in Czech Republic did this, but 3 years earlier in 2017, IKEA Italy had done some, they had worked with BBD Group and the non-profit organisation Telefona to come up with an experiential piece of creative that helps people to feel and witness what it is like to live under domestic abuse. And their tagline for that was violence is closer than you think. Sometimes there's just a wall between you and it. So to try and make people aware of this issue that a lot of women are living with. So when you do these pieces of work, the interesting thing is if you should ever look at this on YouTube and scroll down and read the comments, there are lots of comments which is like, oh, this is IKEA just doing it so that they can make furniture, make us buy furniture. Oh, why on earth would IKEA think that they should tackle this? If you're going to do this kind of work, be ready to answer those tough questions, be ready to hold your nerve in the face of backlash. Because if you know, again, that your mission is to side with the many, if you know, again, that your mission is to be inclusive and open, then that means that sometimes you have to stand with the underrepresented and take the hard knocks that they often take. So this piece of work that I'm going to talk about is the IKEA Refugee Shelter. The figures speak for themselves. This what happened in, I think it was before the Brexit vote. So if anyone can think back to what it was like, the news feeds were like before Brexit, and there seemed to be a story every day about refugees washing up on our shores, swamping our countries. And across Europe, there was just discord and dissent and dissatisfaction at how the issue of refugees was being dealt with. And in the face of that, IKEA partnered with the UNHCR and the non-profit organisation Better Shelter, and they used their expertise, they played to their strengths in flat pack furnishing and helped create this refugee shelter, which is safer, more durable, it's easier to assemble, it gives people peace of mind, it gives refugees a sense of place and identity and pride and dignity. And in creating that, probably wasn't very popular, but they went on in 2016 to win the Beazley Design, beating, as I said here, David Bowie's final album and a robotic surgeon. So again, going back to that initial thing about why does inclusion and diversity matter to what we do, there is a human point. And if you can't get past the human point and you think that that's too fluffy, then there is business sense in doing these things. But I hope that the human point sometimes is enough of a stimulant. So this is my personal story and my personal involvement. This is the magazine that I worked on. And what I'm going to share with you is just the fact that sometimes, I mean, I talked about the fact that if you're a global company or you're working for a global client who works in, it operates in different markets, there can sometimes be some tension between your core values or the big core values that may have been centered in Western society versus what is accepted and adhered to in other markets. When I worked on this title, if you look at the Kirsty and Clara story, that was a lesbian couple that lived in the UK. They were having their first child and they lived in, I think it was Clara's mum's attic. And we did them a makeover to turn that little one room into a whole living space for the whole family and the new baby. And it caused uproar. We did this just as Russia were passing the laws to say that it was illegal to promote the gay lifestyle. And we were in Poland at the time as well. We'd just gone into Poland at the time. And there was a lot of debate over whether or not we could run the story, what the fallout would be. In the end, there were some store riots in Poland. In Russia, what was decided was that IKEA pulled the whole magazine because they decided that if we cannot show what we believe in the magazine rather than doctor it, we will just refrain from doing the magazine in Russia. We can't break the law, but that is what we're going to do. Now, what I know is the magazine made money for them. They didn't do it. It was obviously a great thing to do, but they did it because it made money as well. So that was them standing up for inclusion and taking the hit by not doing that. Their IKEA representatives had to go on to the news in Sweden because the Swedish community was in outrage at the fact that there was a chance that they may be censored. So we had that going on. Just before that, we used to create, our USP was that we would go to real people's homes and they lived with IKEA, and we would shoot their homes and tell their stories about how they created a great home life for themselves. And when we did that, we would do different cover shoots in different homes, and we would always, with all the countries, offer them a choice of covers. And I was on a call, and this was before Zoom, so no one could see me, no one knew what I looked like, but I was on a call with a couple of my colleagues and some of the markets. And someone said on the call, you know, you've put a Black person on the cover, you can't do that, you can't send us that, you can send us anything, a dog, a cat, whatever, but Black people don't work in our market, don't do that again. So my colleague, who isn't Black, looked at me in horror, I, who have lived quite a few years and understand the ways of the world, was like, well, you know, I didn't really expect much different. But afterwards, we spoke to our client at IKEA and explained to her what had happened. And what she said was, you just keep sending those covers. We do not change. This is what we stand for. This is what we believe. You just keep sending those covers. And we did. And it was 2 years later, I think, when the cover, if you can see the little girl hiding in the den that she's made out of the sofa, that country took that cover. So they took a Black person on their cover and they celebrated that story. So what I take from that is, it may take 1, 2, 3, 100 times of knocking on the door to make people see the inclusion and diversity and being open to everyone matters. But the change will come if you hold fast in sending that message and sharing that message. And when we did our very last issue, which is the one with Ginger, the drag queen, on the cover, those same countries had her on the cover. So I'd just like to leave you with that thought that if you are at times struggling with thinking that, you know, you're not making a difference, persevere, because the difference, I am an example, IKEA is an example of the fact that the difference will out. Thank you.